I never thought I'd find myself here, writing something like this, but I guess I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone out there will tell me I'm not crazy. It all started a few months ago, right before our wedding. Everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. We'd been planning it for over a year, and I was finally at that point where I thought I could breathe easy. But deep down, I felt a little uneasy, a nagging suspicion I ignored because I didn't want to ruin the moment. She was beautiful, my fiancée, Lena. Tall with these piercing blue eyes, hair that shimmered when the sunlight hit it just right. She was smart, ambitious, and funny, everything I thought I wanted. We'd been together for 3 years and I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But then the first red flag appeared, small but persistent, like a whisper I couldn't ignore. It started with her phone. She always kept it close, even when she was in the shower or I'd see her glance at it nervously when I walked into the room, quick to hide it behind her back or slip it into her purse. I didn't think much about it at first. Maybe she was just cautious, or maybe she was hiding something. She'd brush it off when I asked about who she was texting. "Just my sister," she'd say, flashing that sweet smile that made me second-guess myself. But I knew better. Something wasn't right. Then came the texts. They were subtle at first, short, casual greetings, emojis that seemed innocent enough. But I noticed she'd often delete the messages quickly, especially when I was nearby. Her fingers would fly across the screen and her eyes darted around, that nervous energy. I brushed it aside, convincing myself I was paranoid. Maybe I was just overthinking it. One night, though, I saw her with her phone in her hand, sneaking out of the living room. I was half asleep on the couch, tired from work, when I caught her in the act. Her back was turned and she was typing something. I got up, my stomach twisting. I stepped closer and I saw the screen glow with a message: "Can't wait to see you tonight." My heart froze, my mind raced. Who the hell was she meeting? I confronted her the next day. Carefully, I tried to sound calm, but inside I was boiling. "Lena, who were you texting last night? Who are you meeting?" She looked surprised, then a little defensive. "It's nothing, just some old friend. You know how guys are sometimes, they want to grab a drink." That was a lie. I could tell by her face that she was hiding something, but I didn't push that day. Instead, I kept quiet, watching her, waiting for the next clue. It wasn't long before I found it. A receipt from her phone bill, an expensive dinner at a hotel downtown for two. She hadn't mentioned going out that night, and I knew she'd been planning something. I realized now that I was blind, trying to trust everything was fine. But the signs were there, small, creeping, insidious. I just didn't want to see them. I'd been living in a false sense of security. That's when I started digging deeper, because I had to know the truth. I had to find out if my instincts were right or if I was just imagining things. And I did. I started looking through her messages, her emails, her social media. I found the proof I needed: secret texts, photos at her apartment with someone I recognized immediately. Our mutual friend, Mark. The guy who used to hang out with us, who I thought was just a buddy. Turns out they'd been meeting at her place for weeks. I felt the cold punch of betrayal hit me straight in the gut. Mark was supposed to be a friend, someone I'd trusted. And Lena, my wife-to-be, was sneaking around with him behind my back. I couldn't breathe right. My hands clenched into fists just thinking about it. It was raw, real, and I was furious. That's when I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had to decide how I was going to handle this. The wedding was in 2 weeks and I was still trying to process what this all meant. But I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let this slide. Not without a fight. Not without making her feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused me. That's when I started planning. I needed a plan, something clever, something that would make her regret every secret meeting, every lie. And I'd do it in a way that she wouldn't see coming. Because if I was going down, I was going to make sure she knew exactly what betrayal looked like from my side. Now I'm just waiting for the right moment. The pieces are coming together and I can feel the storm brewing inside me. Once I execute this, there's no turning back. I just hope I'll have the strength to see it through. I spent the next few weeks living in a state of constant tension. Every time I saw Lena, I felt the weight of her lies pressing down on my chest. That nervous energy she had, her quick glances at her phone, that little defensive twitch when I asked questions, was like a neon sign flashing in my mind. She's hiding something. I'd catch her sneaking around and I'd feel this boiling rage that I couldn't quite control. I knew I had to get concrete proof. No more guessing, no more suspicions. I needed something undeniable. So I started to plan my next move carefully, methodically. I wasn't going to confront her blindly. I wanted her to slip up, to give me the evidence I needed without her realizing I'd been watching her every step. One night, I pretended to be cool. Casual, I suggested we order dinner and watch a movie. She was hesitant, a little distracted, but she agreed. I sat on the couch, my palms clammy but my face calm. Lena was nervously fidgeting, pouring wine into glasses, her eyes flickering toward her phone every few seconds. I kept my eye on her, trying to appear relaxed, even though my stomach was churning. As she reached for her phone to check a message, I casually leaned over and grabbed it first. She froze for a second. Wrong move. I thumbed quickly through her messages, my heart pounding. Sure enough, there were texts from Mark, full of innuendos, plans to meet up, and secret emojis that made my stomach turn. She'd been hiding this from me just like I suspected. I looked up at her, my voice low and steady. So this is what you've been hiding. No wonder you've been so secretive lately. Who is Mark, Lena? She looked caught, her cheeks flushing red. It's nothing, just a stupid mistake. Don't lie to me, I snapped. I saw your texts. You've been sneaking around with him for weeks. How could you do this? She looked down, trembling. It's not what it looks like. I didn't mean for it to go this far, it just happened. Hearing that, I felt like my world was collapsing. I'd loved her, trusted her, and this was how it ended. But I also knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I'd been patient, but now I needed to act. I spent days researching how to handle betrayal at this level. I didn't want to just storm into her apartment and scream. That wouldn't serve me. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, feel the sting of betrayal in a way she wouldn't forget. That's when I came up with my plan. I'd set up a little trap, something that would make her realize she was caught, without her even knowing I'd orchestrated it. I'd create an unavoidable scenario where she'd have no choice but to face the music. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to make her realize that I knew everything, that I was done playing her game. The key was to catch her red-handed, but also to make her understand that I had evidence. So, I planted a hidden camera in her apartment, aimed at her usual meeting spot, her living room where she'd meet Mark. I'd been discreet, making sure it wouldn't raise suspicion. I also downloaded a spy app on her phone just to monitor her calls and messages in real time. I didn't want to miss anything. One evening, I got the alert. She was with Mark, just as I suspected. They were sitting close, whispering, their bodies practically glued together. I watched her take his hand, her fingers brushing over his. That was the moment I knew I'd be making my move. All the evidence was collected and I was ready. I waited until she left that night, then I went into her apartment, armed with everything I needed. I wanted her to see that I'd uncovered her lies, her secrets, her betrayal. I wanted her to realize that her actions had consequences. I wasn't just going to leave quietly. This was my way of saying, you crossed the line and now I'm taking back control. I set everything up to be discovered in the morning. I wanted her to find the camera footage, the messages, the proof that I was 2 steps ahead. I planned to confront her then, face to face. With all the evidence laid bare, I could already feel the adrenaline pumping as I put my plan into motion. Lena was going to regret every secret meeting, every lie, every betrayal. And I knew deep down that once she saw what I'd done, she'd finally understand how much she'd hurt me. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was done being passive. Next, I would confront her, face to face, and I'd make sure she understood that I'd fight back, no matter what. But first, I had to wait for the morning to come, for her to wake up and realize her little secret was no longer hidden. And that's when everything was going to change. Morning came faster than I wanted. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, heart pounding like I'd just sprinted a mile. I had everything set. The camera was hidden in her apartment, evidence of her meetings with Mark was secured, and I had all their messages downloaded. I'd played this moment over in my head 100 times. Now it was real. I'd give her the chance to face her betrayal, and I'd finally get clarity on whether she'd truly been unfaithful or if I was just paranoid. I waited until she got out of bed, her movements stiff and nervous as if she knew she was about to be caught. She was rushing around, throwing on her coat, avoiding looking me in the eye. I kept my face blank inside. I was boiling, but I'd learned to hide that anger pretty well. She reached for her keys on the counter, and that's when I stepped in. "Lena, I need to talk," I said, voice steady but heavy with emotion. Her eyes flickered with something, fear maybe. Or guilt. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but her voice cracked. "Don't pretend you don't know," I said. I pulled out my phone and with deliberate slow movements I played the footage from the hidden camera. It was her sitting close to Mark, whispering at her apartment last night. Their hands touching, her leaning into him. It was undeniable. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been meeting him behind my back. How could you?" Her face went pale. "It's not what it looks like. We're just friends. Don't lie." I cut her off. My voice was cold now, a sharp edge I couldn't hide. "I saw the messages. I saw the hotel receipt. You've been hiding this for weeks, Lena. How long has this been going on? Do you even care about what I'm feeling?" She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, her eyes glistened with tears. She looked genuinely stunned, like she hadn't expected me to find everything out this way. Well, I wasn't some naive fool anymore. "I thought I knew you," I said softly, but the anger was still there, ready to burst. "You've been sneaking around, lying to my face. Honestly, I don't even know who you are anymore." She finally managed to whisper, "Please, I didn't mean for it to hurt you. It just happened. I was confused. I didn't want to hurt you." "That's bullshit," I snapped. "You had your chance to tell me, Lena. Instead, you chose secret meetings, hidden texts, and fake promises. Well, I've got news for you. That's over." I handed her the phone with the footage still playing. "Here's your proof. I'm done with this game. I think you need some time to think about what you've done, because I sure as hell am." She looked at the screen, her face draining of color. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. I love you." I shook my head, feeling cold and distant. "Love isn't hiding in someone else's arms, Lena. It's respect. And right now I see that you've lost mine." I turned, grabbing my keys. "I'm leaving. Don't try to contact me. You can keep the apartment. I don't want to see you again, not until you realize what you've thrown away." She reached out, her voice trembling. "Wait, can we talk? Just give me a chance to explain." "No," I said firmly. "You've had enough chances. This is over." I walked out, leaving her standing there, clutching her phone. I felt numb, like I was walking through a fog. My stomach twisted, not with grief, but with a sick kind of satisfaction. I'd finally done it. I'd uncovered her lie, and I was making damn sure she knew she'd lost everything. As I stepped into my car, I looked back at the window of her apartment. She was still there, frozen, staring at the screen. I knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger, that she'd try to spin it, try to deny, try to manipulate me into staying, but I wasn't going to let her. I'd planned the revenge carefully, and now that I'd executed it, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control and make her regret every secret, every betrayal. I had a long road ahead, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. The next move was hers, if she even dared to make one. And I was prepared for whatever came next. The silence in my apartment after I left her was deafening. I sat in my car in the driveway for a few minutes, trying to gather myself. My hands still trembled slightly. I felt this strange sense of calm, even though my mind was racing 1,000 miles per hour. I knew I'd done the right thing, that I'd finally taken control. But underneath the relief, there was a gnawing ache, an ache that told me I'd just crossed into a different world. I didn't want her to think I was done. Not yet. Not until she fully realized what I was capable of. I had to make sure she understood that her betrayal had consequences, and I was going to be the one to deliver them. I started piecing together exactly how I was going to do it. It was time to escalate this, show her I wasn't going to be a pushover, that I'd fight fire with fire. First, I went home, grabbed my laptop, and started working. I had already saved all her messages, her secret texts, the footage from the hidden camera. Now I just needed a way to make her feel the full weight of her actions, without crossing the line into anything too destructive. I wasn't about to do anything illegal or ruin her life outright, but I knew I could make her regret it deeply. That's when I found the idea, just subtle enough to hit where it hurt, but not outright destructive. I'd create a fake profile, one that looked exactly like hers, an exact replica of her social media accounts, even down to the photos she'd used. I'd send her a message, something that would make her think she was being caught, or that her secret was out. I sat back and watched her social media account. She kept it active, probably thinking she was safe. I copied her profile, changed a few minor details, and set up a new account with a name that was close enough to hers. I was meticulous about it. I added some pictures she'd taken, some posts she'd written, and even a few comments that she'd made. It was creepy maybe, but necessary. Then I sent the message. Something simple yet direct. I know what you did. We need to talk. I kept it vague enough to make her curious, but clear enough to imply I knew everything. I knew she'd see it, and I knew she'd panic. Sure enough, shortly after, her phone buzzed. She looked at it with wide eyes, then hesitated before opening the message. Her hands trembled as she read, her face turning pale. I could see her trying to keep her composure, but that little flicker of panic was enough for me. I'd planted the seed. I stayed quiet for a few hours, just monitoring her reactions. She kept checking her phone obsessively, trying to figure out who was behind. Message. I wanted her to think she was being watched, to realize that her secrets weren't safe anymore. That's when I decided to push a little harder. I sent another message, this time more threatening. If you want this to stay between us, you'll meet me tonight at the usual place. Her response was immediate. She texted back, "Who is this? Stop messing with me." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I sat back, feeling that cold satisfaction that comes from knowing I was finally getting through to her. She was panicking, and I was going to use that to my advantage. That evening, she left her apartment again. This time, I had already arranged to be nearby, hidden in the shadows. I watched her walk out, her head down, clutching her purse. I could see her nervously glancing around, avoiding eye contact with anyone. It was obvious she knew she was under threat, even if she didn't know exactly who was behind it. I followed at a safe distance, keeping her in sight until she reached the designated spot, a parking lot near a small cafe. There she was, standing alone, looking around nervously. I stayed in the shadows, watching her fidget and check her phone again. That's when I stepped out into the open, just enough to be seen. "Lena," I called softly, voice cold and deliberate. Her head whipped around, eyes wide with shock. She froze for a second, then took a step back. "We need to talk." She looked around, trying to find an excuse, but I stayed firm. "You've been caught, Lena, and I've got proof." I pulled out the phone, showing her the messages and the fake profile I'd set up. Her face went slack, disbelief flickering across her features. "You went this far," she whispered, voice trembling. "Far enough," I said. "You thought you could hide this forever. No, I'm done playing your games. We're done." Her lips trembled. "Please, I didn't mean for it to go this way. I was so confused. I love you." I looked at her, feeling nothing but cold fury. Love doesn't cheat. Love doesn't lie and sneak behind someone's back. You're done, Lena. I'm walking away, and I want you to know this is the end of us. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the dark, clutching her phone like it was her last lifeline. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Finally, she was seeing that I was serious. There was no more hiding, no more secrets. I'd made sure she knew I was one step ahead, no matter what she tried next. Now I just had to wait for her to realize what she'd lost. And I knew, deep down, that she'd never forget this night. Next, I'd see what her next move was and get ready for the fallout. Because once you pull the trigger on revenge, you can't go back. The days that followed were a blur of cold silence and tense anticipation. I'd executed the plan with precision, making sure she understood that her betrayal had consequences. Still, I expected her to come crawling back, begging for explanation or forgiveness. Instead, she kept her distance, probably trying to figure out what I knew and how far I was willing to go. I stayed mostly quiet, watching from afar, but I knew I had to do more. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without feeling the weight of it. I wanted her to see the damage she'd done, to understand that betrayal like this didn't just disappear. It lingered, festering, until someone finally decided to face it head-on. One afternoon, I found her sitting alone in her apartment, staring at her phone with a blank, distant look. Her cheeks were sunken, eyes red-rimmed. It was obvious she'd been crying, and that made me feel a strange, bitter satisfaction. She was finally feeling what I'd felt all along, the sting of being betrayed. I stepped into the room, my voice low. You've been hiding for days. I wanted to give you some time to think. But now I want to hear the truth from you. Why? Why did you do this? She looked up, her eyes glassy. I don't know. I guess I was just lost. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought maybe we could work through it, but I see now I was wrong. Her words were hollow, just like I expected. I crossed my arms, considering what to say next. I wasn't about to forgive her just yet, but I had to get her to understand how deep her betrayal ran. You know, I started, voice rough with restrained anger. I found your secret meeting spot. I watched you and Mark at her apartment. I saw how you touched him, how you looked at him like he was your whole world. You think you can hide that forever, that I wouldn't find out? She flinched. Please, I was stupid. I was confused. I didn't want to hurt you. I just... Save it, I snapped. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. You're done. I'm not sticking around for more lies. She looked like she was about to cry again, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into staying. It was over. This was the moment I'd been planning for. I want you to pack your things, I continued. You can stay here until you're ready to leave. I don't want to see or hear from you again after that. I want you to understand you lost me and I don't see any way back. Her voice trembled. Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere but here, I said coldly. Just go. And don't try to contact me, not until I say so. She nodded silently, tears streaming down her face. I turned and left her sitting there, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. It wasn't easy, nothing about this was easy, but I knew it was necessary. She needed to feel the loss, the pain of losing someone she betrayed. Later that evening, I came back to her apartment. I took one last look around, knowing I wouldn't be back. I grabbed the set of keys from the hook by the door and dropped them on the counter. Then, I reached into my pocket and slipped a little note onto the table. Your things are packed. Don't come back. Consider this the end of what we had. I paused, then added, goodbye, Lena. I hope you find what you're looking for. You lost me, and that's what you'll regret the most. I turned and walked out, leaving her there with nothing but her tears and a mountain of lies. As I closed the door behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, clarity. I'd taken control, finally, and I was done with her betrayal. Walking away, I realized that revenge isn't about destruction or revenge for its own sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity when someone you trusted throws it away. And that's exactly what I'd done. Sometimes the only way forward is to cut ties and walk away, knowing you fought for yourself and won. Next, I'll reflect on what I learned from all this. Because sometimes the biggest lesson is realizing what you truly deserve and never settling for less. The days after I moved out and cut ties with Lena felt strange, like I'd finally stepped out from a long, suffocating shadow. I kept replaying everything in my mind, trying to understand how it all went wrong. The betrayal, the lies, the secret meetings, it was a gut punch I didn't see coming, even though deep down I'd known something was off. That realization, though, was both freeing and painful, because the truth is, you only really find your strength when everything else is tearing you apart. Looking back now, I see how I let things slide for too long, ignoring the small signs, convincing myself I was overthinking. We all do that sometimes. We ignore the red flags because we want to believe the best in people, especially the person we love. But the moment I saw her with Mark, my instinct screamed that something was seriously wrong. I should have trusted myself from the start. That's a lesson I carry with me now. Never dismiss your gut feelings, no matter how uncomfortable they make you. Breaking away from Lena was the hardest thing I've ever done. It stung to see her cry, to know she'd lost everything she'd built with me, but I also knew it had to happen. Staying wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have only delayed my healing. I learned that sometimes you have to cut out the toxicity, even if it leaves a scar, because that scar is proof you survived and took back control of your life. Now I've been working on myself, going to therapy, reconnecting with friends I'd pushed aside, and focusing on the things that truly matter. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about reclaiming my peace. I realized that revenge was just a way to regain a sense of control, but in the end, that control comes from within. I don't need to harm her to feel better. I just need to know I'm better off without her. One thing I want anyone reading this to take away is this: trust yourself. Don't ignore the small signs of trouble because you're afraid of what they might mean. If your intuition is telling you something's wrong, listen to it. Sometimes your gut is right and ignoring it only makes things worse. And when betrayal happens, you don't have to stay stuck in anger or pain. You can choose to walk away, rebuild, and find happiness on your terms. I won't lie, breaking that final tie was brutal. But it was also the best decision I ever made. Because now I know what I deserve. And I refuse to settle for anything less. Looking back, I realize I was living a nightmare I couldn't wake up from until I decided to wake myself up. That's what true strength is, finding the courage to end what's hurting you even if it hurts at first. Because in the end, that pain is just a sign you're healing. And healing is what I'm doing now. Stronger, wiser, and finally free.